The fourth way system comprises two major parts, and essentially all the ideas in the system can be divided into these two parts. One which addresses the cosmology of the system, the other which addresses the psychology of the system. The cosmology refers to what we would call the universe. The fourth way presents this idea in a slightly different way. It's called the ray of creation, which we will get into in another video. And then the psychology really refers to the world of man, to human beings, to our psychological world, and to our physical existence. And the idea is, as you can see from the little dot in the middle where these two circles and these two triangles meet, it's like a gateway or a doorway or a threshold. It's at that point that consciousness can transcend our psychology, our sense of identity as a person, and all of our thoughts and emotions and sensations, all of our identity associated with all that. Consciousness can, in a sense, slip through that gateway, across that threshold. And this is what the idea of self-remembering in the fourth way and the idea of transformation in the fourth way is about. It is about essence, which is the simple form of consciousness in man, becoming conscious of itself, and as a result, crossing that threshold into higher worlds, from the physical and psychological world that we live in, and becoming conscious of itself in increasingly higher dimensions. This is just a list, just to give you an idea of what is meant by the cosmology, the ideas. You can see the ray of creation, the table of hydrogens, the law of 7 and 3, what it means that organic life on Earth as opposed to the Earth itself, the moon, the influence of the moon on humanity, what is awakening, what does the fourth way mean by the term higher centers, and all of this in the context of transformation. All of those are the cosmological ideas of the system. Now, when Gurdjieff first introduced the ideas, he principally began with the cosmology. He intermixed both, but if you read In Search of the Miraculous, you'll see that he tried to give the big picture. What is our relationship as human beings on planet Earth, in a solar system, in the larger universe? What does that mean in the context of the fourth way? And that's how he started teaching. Uspensky, on the other hand, when he started presenting the ideas later, when he was working independently, he would start with the psychology. And you can see all of these ideas here: identification, body types, imagination, inner considering, self-remembering, essence and personality. I'm just reading here some of them. These refer to the psychological world of a human being, and with the attempt to learn all of these things about ourselves so as to understand what consciousness is not, and by virtue of that, enabling consciousness to realize itself, and again slip across that threshold into higher dimensions, higher worlds of consciousness and awareness. In fact, Uspensky, when he set about to present these ideas in London after he had departed from Gurdjieff, he wrote a book. It's called The Psychology of Man's Possible Evolution. And he lays out all of these ideas you see in the lower circle. Not all of them, but the main ones, in a very concentrated form. And he would, when new people came to consider joining his groups, he would have someone read one of these 5 lectures from that book, and then he would answer questions. And he required people to come to 5 separate lectures where one of the lectures from his book would be read, and only after listening to all 5 lectures and hearing Uspensky address questions was a person able to join his groups. Another thing just worth pointing out in terms of the cosmology and the psychology, when we talk about the cosmology, we're also talking about consciousness. That's the realm of consciousness. Consciousness is not the body, the mind. It is not what the fourth way calls the four lower centers. Consciousness is independent of all that, but in a normal, let's say normal condition for human beings, consciousness is identified with, it is attached to our body, our mind, our four lower centers, which we'll go into in another video, the idea of the centers. But consciousness, when it identifies with the body and the mind, the four lower centers, it forms as personality in us, basically. And we are now experiencing our sense of identity as a human being. And the hinge here in the middle is what is called essence. And again, we'll go into a more detailed explanation of what essence is and what personality is. But this diagram is just to show that what evolution means, what awakening means, what enlightenment means, is passing from the lower circle, where primarily we experience ourselves as our personality, our sense of I and me. And that's where we live almost all the time as human beings. And it would mean passing from that or through that to the very simple form of awareness in ourselves, which you could call essence, which is simply a simple form of being, of knowing that you are here, that you exist, and the recognition that your consciousness knows you are here. It's not your thoughts, it's not your emotions, it's not your behavior, it's not your attitudes, it's not your political opinions, it's not your cultural preferences. It is simply a simple realization that you are here, that you are being here, really behind your eyes. You're here. That's how you know you exist. That's how you know everything exists, is this simple form of awareness. And it is from here that self-remembering takes on significance. Self-remembering in the fourth way refers to this simple being, the simple consciousness of being, beginning to realize itself, recognize itself. And through that, going on into further stages of transformation, whereby this simple awareness expands and becomes deeper, broader, more expansive, more inclusive, and all the way up to what would be considered cosmic consciousness. That's a term used in some books in the 20th century. And it refers to a very high state of consciousness, which would be more akin to what the Eastern teachings call nirvana. But this begins in the fourth way. This is explained that you don't jump from your sense of I as a person in personality and go right to nirvana, although it's often portrayed that way. The hinge in this transformation, passing from a lower world to higher worlds, is what is called essence. And this is the simple form of awareness, a sense of being, pure just being, that is, it's sort of the seed case for consciousness. And every human being is born with this seed case. But in very few people is the seed planted, and very few cases are those plantings, do they yield a stripling, a small tree, and then even more rarely do those striplings go on to mature as large trees. That's just an analogy, but it gives you an idea that we're all born with this potential. But to have that potential come to fruition in its fullest capacity, which would be full-blown consciousness, that is conscious of being conscious and being able to exist independently of the body and the mind, and being able to knowingly exist and transcend the death of the body. This is a huge idea, but this is in fact what the fourth way points to, and this is what the entire system of the fourth way is about.